So Alita will be doing
I'm doing
sign
sign
language.
There we go.
Oh, you're not in. That was deliberate, I think.
Why does that-
The CCR. You're down. I don't convince me. You really.
You gotta lean
If you're
in.
gonna speak, you lean in. I can call this meeting to order. And I think we don't have anybody joining us on Zoom, but we're recording, so maybe if everyone could just keep your volume up a little bit, like you're lecturing. Except for you, you can talk very quietly, just kidding. So yeah, we would like to, everyone's committee, a little subcommittee had a chance to meet, and I think we're all gonna share what amazing insights we all came up with during our little meetings, and start with community engagement.
So I think Latasha, community engagements, ready to talk about it?
Sure. We all met at Northside, and one of the biggest things we kind of began the meeting with was discussing how peer libraries and other libraries in Virginia had done their community engagement for their 5-year plans, and tried to pay particular attention to what was done since COVID had taken place, just because there might have been new ideas, and new ways that we could reach out to our various communities in all the counties and the city that we're a part of. And we talked about starting with as well a staff survey. And with that, we kind of began talking about previous surveys that had been done at JMRL and kind of putting some a layout together for work plans of doing a staff survey, things that we would like to ask of our staff, with the idea that we can use that to help us better understand what questions we may need to get feedback from our patrons and our non-users as well in the long run. And so Kayla was very nice and began and put together for us the a rough draft survey that we would like to be able to send out to the staff. Hopefully, I think we were saying next month,
I think
or as soon as possible.
the timing that we discussed was.
Yeah.
This group discussing this draft survey today, signing off on it, or want to add to it, and then sending something out like around the end of this month. And then the subcommittee reviewing it next month, and trying to roll that into survey for the patrons. And send that out in July, so that may be aggressive, but we'll see.
That's our hope. We would like to stay.
I
with
like
that,
it.
so.
Do you want to, Meredith, should we just go through the survey and see if?
Yeah, I mean, I took a quick look and I was shocked how short it felt.
Yeah.
I feel like you are packing some stuff in here, but it feels like if I opened this up as a staff member, I don't think I'd be like, oh, God, another time to answer.
I was gonna say, it's probably a good thing if this one's not too long, because the web committee is doing a scavenger hunt for staff for the beta website that is a little long, and then doing something for the public before the beta website launches. So I don't want to inundate staff all at once with
Right. We all just
stuff.
do that. What's the timing of the scavenger hunt
Next week, we hope to start it on the 24th,
and finish by?
before the website launches in July, just sort of like give them time to.
Maybe we could put a more definite cap on that one.
Right.
And start this one after that. Okay, so it's how would you rate JMRL in the 6 categories that we've traditionally used for our strategic planning: access to outreach, collection, staffing, finance, technology, facilities. Again, these are taken from the state library's recommended plans. Tell us more.
And is there a limit?
No, well, I'm not sure, that's a good question. Get a little chat on that next. I think it's a long answer, so it might not be overall count, so.
1,000 characters.
This is good though, because it will give us some hard data to look at, and numbers, but then also give people a chance to share their opinions.
There.
We added all of JMRL's mission and values just so that people would have within the survey. And then it's a simple question, you know, this is working, is JMRL holding its mission and values, and then why are we not? Okay. This might be the only spot where I feel like maybe we want to tweak that a little bit. Just because it's pretty binary. Basically give people time to answer, space to answer.
I don't know.
Yeah, so.
No, that-
And then we talked about trying to do a SWOT analysis with our staff, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We did a little preview of this at the Central Library. We did something locally here just for this branch. We tried to use language here to get people to clarify what they were thinking about. So for strengths, let's talk about what our staff's good at, what makes our team unique, what makes us proud to be part of the team, and how others positively perceive us. So this is kind of internal factors. And then weaknesses, let's talk about improvements our staff need to make, resources we lack, how these negative attributes might be perceived by others. So again, internal. And then opportunities, talk about how JMRL can use its strengths to improve our library and services in the community. And then threats or obstacles, listing problems or issues that threaten the success of the team and the services we provide, and how known weaknesses can open the door to threats. So kind of draw a line to those two. So there might be some wordsmithing in there as well. It's okay. I guess I'm having a hard time in my mind leaping from the SWOT for staff to how that would look in a public survey. But they're not part of the team offering the service, they're the recipients of the service. So I think we have to talk about whether or not we really follow that methodology, or try to find a broader way to say, hey, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the library system?
Well, a little bit of a hard time with threats, but
Yeah, that's a strong word.
it's a lot of, I mean, I can understand threatening things. If it's something,
What threats?
threats. So I'm glad you said threats or obstacles.
So here's the other place where it's
Yeah.
about.
Well, no, it's on the bottom, it's the last question. I think it's the greatest threats. That might start to making me think of like a security.
I mean, that's a legit.
Yeah, that is.
It is, it
Yeah.
can be that broad.
And it,
Absolutely.
you know, but that, yeah,
In fact, I guarantee you that will come up.
Yeah.
Working in a public building.
but as long as you feel like that's one of the things you're looking for. You're not looking for,
You mean we as a planning committee are looking?
or just in terms of it, like you're looking to have staff tell you if they don't feel safe.
Yeah,
Oh,
In a library, is that part of this question?
yeah, I think for the staff, it's a legitimate question, and concern potentially we'd want to know about.
Okay,
Yeah.
For the public, different.
different.
Yeah.
What did you get?
You know, this will need to be addressed in the strategic plan, just, we have a lot of concern among staff about. They read the news and see what's happening in the wall,
Yeah.
and there are legitimate concerns about the safety of a public building.
And I think even like in the large libraries especially, and like near the end of the night or something, and there's only one person that you might see, or you know, that could be very scary.
It's not an uncommon thing that we hear from staff.
And
And
this,
all of them.
this rolls into facilities then too, because the feedback that we get back could be things that we need to address about our facilities. Be it cameras, be it
Lighting.
layout,
Mhm.
lighting, that kind of thing. Keys, and it could very well, and if staff feels that way, then we need to think. Well, if we feel this way, is this something that the public may
Is this
feel as
preventing
well?
the public from coming to the library if they don't feel
Exactly.
it's- Okay.
Okay, and then we wanted to really focus on asking our staff who work the most with the members of our communities, what organizations they think we should reach out to in terms of getting more feedback. So that could be getting input for this plan and then potentially partnering with moving forward. And then just a few like, is there anything that you really feel needs to be included? You know, feel strongly, so we see some big sense there, or something that 90% of the staff feels like needs to be included, should be considered. And then, are you sure you haven't forgotten anything? These two might be redundant.
Are we sure, those are the only three that are required? Is there a reason why those are required and
I don't think so.
Might have
Make
forgotten
it-
to hit the button.
I can make it not required? I mean, it's just, I didn't know if anything in particular was required for people to send.
I think the ones that I would like to see required would be the data ones, the yes, no, and so everybody would have to fill out this first block. And then are we holding a mission?
Exactly.
Because the rest of them are kind of tell us what you think about this, and some people will want to.
I did add, I don't know, an other to there if that matters, if we just wanted to say yes or no or other.
I think that would be useful. If the majority of staff member don't know whether we're holding our mission, then that would be something I would want to address.
So make that one required.
Other.
It's just like an option that you can select, like the.
Maybe.
If we don't-
Address by wire.
Yeah.
Okay, so then,
We'll say that's.
Turn on. yep,
Yeah.
I think that would just be interesting to see if we get a percentage or like, what are our missions?
Yeah. That's why
Even
we-
though you gave a kind of. This is actually feels like a reading test.
Did you?
Comprehension.
Yeah, did you even read that first? part?
Yeah, did you skim?
Oh, no, I can't let me go forward because it's a requirement.
Oh.
well,
you don't
we're not
know
gonna
what it
submit.
is.
I won't send it, I'm just-
You're fired. So you're saying most, because I think if you make them required, people can just go back.
Yeah.
And are you informing them that they're not being tracked at all? That
Well, I think that-
answers are anonymous.
One of the things that we need to decide as a group. There's two options, basically. One is to, one is just to make it completely anonymous, fill it out. The other is to require everybody to be logged in at their JMRL account to use it. And the third is to allow them to self-select whether or not they post. I would probably lean towards full anonymity just to get the most honest responses. And I also don't think that this needs to be like other feedback that we've asked for in the past. There's been the response to the organization has been, yeah, we will reach back out to you on this, and it's not necessarily the case here. Not if Kayla puts in, I need this thing in order to do these, I'm not gonna reach back out necessarily to you unless it's a private. Long way of saying, I think that it should be anonymous.
But you might want to stress that. I don't know. I think it's one of those things where people feel like, pulling out work for me.
I think.
Can I be really honest
Can
about what I think?
Can they try?
When I say
It tracked me.
that would probably be highlighted in the, or we can put it up in here.
Yeah, so we want to say,
I do both, maybe, yeah.
your feedback is anonymous and appreciated. I don't know.
Would you wanna, I mean, like, if somebody has a really good idea that we might want fleshed out, I think it might also be useful that if they want to leave their contact, just say at the end, like, if you. I don't know, something that allows them to say, like, I would like you to know who I was saying this. Maybe.
I guess I'm trying to figure out the difference between like what we're looking for here versus if they have a really good idea, they should put it in the staff feedback form. Like we
Right.
have other avenues.
But also, if you're already making them do one thing, they're probably not gonna do it a second time.
Well, I think that probably David is trying to say like. Responsibility of having to respond to each person's concern. I'll often be like, well, if you're really concerned about something, or you can really write it really. Put it in. I mean, you could put it at the top and say, if you would like to have any of your ideas followed up on, please fill out this staff submission form or whatever it is, or if you have something, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're looking for broad strokes, right? Like we're looking for training sort of things that a lot of people are concerned. Whatever the issue might be. And not necessarily like outside of that one. We did actually give us your good idea.
So maybe after that one.
Kayla, if we select restricted users in the domain, does it collect that information?
No, because if we look in responses, it's, or if we look into settings, at the top, it says do not collect. So I'm pretty sure that means you have to sign, that just means that someone without a JMRL user can't access it. Like if they go to that form, they have to log in to see it, but then even at the top, if you go back to the view where you had it pulled up, it says not shared.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it will give you, like, when I used to manage it, will give you like the IP address. But that just means they'll do whether it's coming.
Yeah, you're trying to say having one of the libraries.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say that people, if they feel like they have to sign in for it, they're probably gonna be signed in because they're gonna be clicking on this link from their email. But regardless, if like, it brings them to a sign-in page and then we say, well, we're not tracking who sent this, they might not believe you, even if that's not shared.
Then the only benefit to restricting users is that if this link were to get shared on Facebook
Right.
or Reddit, like, then anyone can. Yeah.
Okay,
I randomly fill out surveys that are. I don't get enough surveys in my life.
okay, yeah, I'm totally something that is without restricting it, so that's fine. I think please don't share. Did you add anything?
If we want to at the end, maybe after,
You could add it to that question, the one that asked.
That's a good idea.
what other thoughts do you want to make sure JMRL hears? And then after that, which if you want feedback on these thoughts, please leave your email address. Please leave your contact.
I promise really it's good.
When you say it sounds extra believable.
Okay. Anything, so aside from the, like, those kind of detail oriented things, anything that anybody who wasn't involved in this initial discussion thinks that we're missing here, this is remember for staff. And then the next meeting for this group will be to try to pull at this to see what we want from the public. So I'd like to see this, you know, at least some of the responses in before we meet again as a subcommittee, right? So we have something to work with. We know it'll tell us pretty quickly, like, oh, this is a good idea or a bad idea in terms of how it's constructed.
How are you planning to present the info from this when you do? I guess you can only do a few charts because it was mostly answers, right?
Yeah, I think it would be something along those lines, if we wanted to include it in the final. We don't necessarily need to present it to anybody, it would just help.
Not to us.
Yeah, help inform our decision making, but if we wanted to include it in the final report, it would probably be charts for the two. I want to say binary, but it's not binary, because one of us four choices, quaternary and binary choices, but the rest of it might be something along.
Choice.
The rest of it might be along the lines of themes heard, themes with, you know, reinforced, including this or that. Okay, so do we have to sign off from the committee for the subcommittee to send this out? How many people are on that web committee? Oh, we're asking everybody on the staff to do this?
We're asking everyone on the staff to do the beta scavenger hunt, and we're offering an hour of training because Sarah did it. It took like her 45 minutes to. It's a long survey. It's like a fact finding, like look for this and tell us how you found it and was it easy? And so.
And so the hour training is incentive, I was wondering if we were incentivizing it in any other way.
$10 gift card to Amazon.
We can do it, but like, I can, yeah, it's no, we can't.
Yeah, we can't incentivize the strategic value. That one we are. I am a little concerned about the time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like. We've been trying to get the site out.
I know, both of them are time sensitive, so.
Yeah.
Maybe we can trust that staff can do 2 surveys at once.
I mean, one as a scavenger hunt is very different than another, so it's possible that.
45 minutes.
I mean,
You've
if
given
you
them an
give
hour.
An hour of training time to
Training,
go
yeah.
play and find things, like I think the librarians are into that, so.
I'm just concerned because it took Sarah 45 minutes and she's the webmaster.
It was also like late,
Related.
it was late last night too, like she did it like at 9 or 10 o'clock last
All right, but for this group, are we good to say that the bones of this look good and we'll send this out to staff? The subcommittee will meet and discuss what we get from it and then try to turn that into a full-on survey.
Oh, is there a time frame, like time limit for them to do it?
Probably we would set like a 10-day or less.
Yeah, unless,
Yeah. I would probably lean towards less than a week or so.
yeah.
So I would think then that our subcommittee would look to present to the full group here a draft for a public survey.
My recommendation for the public would be 10 questions or less.
Yeah, small.
So pack a bit in there, but I think that people would see 20 questions and be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think that we want a few, like this one, a few data gathering, you know, where we can point to like this percent of people and percent of people, and then some open-ended stuff. I remember from the last survey, it was the open-ended comments that led to actionable things. You know, because pretty much everybody is like, yeah.
It's fine.
It's fine. But it was like, you know what I'd like to see, you know, I want the non-registration story time, right, that we talked about that one, that came up. We can also bring that to our partners at the CNE and see if they have time, to have nonprofit excellence to review it. They had offered to do that for us on services. It has to be pretty quick.
It did turn on the progress bar, so it shows page 1 of 3 and like shows where you are, so that way staff don't get overwhelmed or they can tell where they are. On this Thursday, yes. Yeah.
Oh my God, is this a 20-page one?
Oh, that's the beta.
Personality when it's that.
Okay, question, anything else?
That's it. At least for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is great.
Looking forward to.
Oh, I wanted to point out that at the back end, this was kind of a joke, but kind of not, I don't think we would do this with a public survey. We did add a Jamboard. So it's a link to this Google product, which is like a big whiteboard basically, where people can leave sticky notes for other ideas. It's just a way to kind of visually represent this.
Yeah.
Nice.
Ask Sarah and I about the Jamboard that we made.
I'm wondering if this is tied into your login, so we could follow up on, like, I think this might be where we get good ideas. So we want to go back to people
I
and if
don't-
this is, I don't know.
I'm not sure how all this works.
It looks like, you can see the little
Like,
block.
I don't know. Well, I've clicked on it to look at it, but I didn't create that. I was looking.
Could you
Okay.
write us a note?
There.
Okay.
And but anyone can edit it,
Oh.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
Like-
super fun.
So somebody can change what you said?
yeah,
Oh, no.
yeah, and he just pretended to be
No, the
me.
thing too, is like then you can say, okay, all of these are related to this topic and you
doesn't-
can move them around. So
so
you
it-
can say, okay, these are like all of this from,
Yeah, I can see like, okay, so David wrote that and somebody had a thought. Maybe they can pin something on his, but not change what he said.
Haley, can you confirm that? Can you edit either of those?
Yeah,
Because it says it's from her, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that concerned.
Well, I mean,
like, I feel like most people are gonna be like, how do I use this? More than like, because it's not very intuitive, but it's still kind of fun, like,
I think that we could,
here's me, you can see that I'm drawing right now.
I'm not sure how valuable this is.
But
Fun engagement.
The cool kids tell me this is.
I attended a webinar where they used this and
Mhm.
it generated a lot of cool ideas. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, it does work
Yeah.
if you use it right.
If we use it right. Set background, clear frame. I did notice that it let me, if I was moving forward to new frames, it let me add frames. So is it gonna let anybody do that? Because we can end up with an infinite amount of pages. Right now, we serve our community, we provide free equitable access, we have our bad.
When you go to share, what does it give you as options?
so anyone in this group can edit.
Anyone
But can you make it, I mean, if. Okay,
So if it's view. I guess I'm the owner, so I can't change my permissions. David, I'm gonna make you a viewer and see what that does.
I don't like it. You know, I just want to give us a call.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I think as a, so to refresh it, see if it'll let you.
To give you the.
Wow.
I'm also in the 5-year plan group though, and have a set of access.
To give him all and take away all of that.
I'm gonna send, I mean, we don't have to discuss this at the moment, but I'll test it with Sarah as a viewer and.
Okay, it is a neat little thing that probably 5 people will look at there, but maybe it will, it's first engagement. And it's a new tool, so. Well, we ever used a Jam board before? He said that. You and me both. All right, anything else from engagement? All right. Next on the agenda, technology facilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's me.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
So we met virtually and we.
Because we're the technology committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a few more documents I'll need to like share or like link or shortcut into here that part of this was like a jumping off board to not only talk about technology and facilities, but to re-engage with the technology advisory committee. So I reached out to TAC and TAC met, and we're planning to go through the peer library 5-year plans and pull out specific things that we've noticed from other libraries' five-year plans that relate to technology. So let me add this as a
I
shortcut.
have the notes that here. This one is a little bit complicated because on the technology side, there's a staff technology advisory committee, but there's also the board technology committee, which will want to have some input on this here too. So they're meeting at the end of this month. We don't have anything to share at this point, but just let them know where they are. So that's just one kind of fear. Talk about this.
Right.
I think for all the subcommittees, we try hard to keep things broad level, on board level, like here, so the language here is like introducing the public to new and standard technologies is a goal that the board would have for this is what we want our library to do for the public. And then the staff will have a parallel set of like, here are the types of things that would be, if anything makes it into the big plan, it would be similar to what we did for the current technology goal, which is examples include, or examples such as, and it would have some things that maybe we're looking at, and especially with technology, because that could change.
Yeah, right. And some of the comments that I've seen from staff, talking about like as the goals are like serving our staff informational needs internally, like collaboration. So like just like add that there as when it comes to like not only equity and accessibility and technology for the patrons, but I think on a larger goal too for like helping our staff and like the resources, things like that.
So the subcommittee talked about some potential big goals, on ensuring equity and accessibility and technology. Security, that's one word, it's not a goal, but you get the point. And it would be something along the lines of that JMRL is well prepared to protect digital public resources and data. So we're talking specifically about digital security. Right? Keep our digital resources current, accessible, secure, like that. For the facility then, much as I just said, we would keep away from specific goals. I think that the central library renovation board, my impression is that as the front and center, it's in our strategic plan. Certainly, that has been push. Then we talked about a bunch of things that included keeping facilities up to a certain standard. So having a welcoming physical environment there and a lot of different thoughts came out of that discussion. Consistent experience across branches, which is impossible, but still, you can notice it like branding and things like that. That might include signage. Parking is a problem everywhere except for Louisa, that's the only, it's perfect here. Even Nelson, you got a big lot where it's shared and there things come up every once in a while. Central's lot. Does not exist. Evaluate the results of the branch facility needs assessment. So just kind of things about, making sure we have a goal in there about keeping our facilities up to date. They're all at such different stages in their life, basically. So Susan, it's brand new, right? But pretty soon. Haley, 10 years this year, right? And things start to break after 10 years.
Yeah, elevators.
Even in the most beautiful libraries.
Well, you said that Central doesn't have parking, but you do provide, was it 2 hours?
Yes, the friends of the library.
Yes.
Yes. You'd be surprised though, that people take advantage of it, we have people that use it, but most people consider it, I shouldn't say, I'll dig on that, but a lot of people we hear say it's too far, they don't want to cross, it's something about crossing the street.
Yeah, especially, I guess, if you have young children.
Yeah, children are a lot of things
Mhm.
carrying children. But we're limited in what we can do.
Right. Yeah, I parked across the street one day for something here. And it cost me like $15 or something.
In the-
That lot, yeah. And it was only a couple of hours.
And after a brief COVID respite from parking, enforcement is back to the vengeance. And then we also, I think the board would want a goal about expanded brick and mortar services if possible. So where are the people who want to get services in areas that are underserved, follow the growth of the population, talk about the service, look at the status of the branch, talk about where maybe there's been a lot of discussion between the board and the Louisiana County about services in the Tri-State area. We've got a huge population, there are a lot of people live there, and one of our lowest percentages are holding households. Because the folks there either they use digital resources actually, but physical resources. Like having a lot of cards is pretty well. They go to either board school, they kind of anything I'm skipping there, Kayla, on either end?
No, I don't think so. I think, working with TAC to help kind of weed through some of those other ideas, but I think with TAC, we kind of got a good start last year, like you said, on parsing it down into something like board level versus.
So I think the goal would be to have some draft language. Goal would be to have draft language for goals when this group meets in July. I think we've got a pretty good start here, but this is only in those specific areas. There might be more like it.
Also be interesting to see what the survey.
Yes.
I mean, I think if security is a huge bubbled up concern, then I think we have to say something about that under this.
Yeah. I am anticipating that.
So we could just put it in.
We could put.
He's proactive.
To make sure that our staff feels.
That might be part of the certain standard one.
Right. Yeah, and we talked about that about how
Something and secure environment.
Yeah, where everyone feels welcome and
Right,
safe.
right.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah. And safety can mean all sorts of things.
I like that.
There you go. Well, and I think that's the kind of umbrella we want to do, because I don't think we can even really say what the concern might be in 3 years, really. I mean,
Or
imagine, and so as long as the goal is big enough.
at 8 different locations and a bookmobile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's
Concerns are very different in Nelson than they are in
and I added in a couple of the things in quotes are a couple things that TAC specifically commented on, like when it comes to keeping digital resources current and when it comes to expanding technology.
Streamline institutional knowledge organization. I mean,
Like, yeah,
Like, currently we have the internet and we have Google Docs and we have other
Yeah.
hard drives, but streamlining those all, so it's more.
it's a fancy way of saying the intranet, but not really. In a way, yeah.
why I like
Yeah.
Yeah, and also the niche academy for staff training, things like that, so.
Yeah, so just making sure we have consistency and where we're putting things and how our staff can access them.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a hybrid goal for staff too, you know. We're talking about what we're offering to the public or strictly our own.
Well, it would be infrastructure stuff, the
Yeah.
staff would product,
Right.
so.
Yeah, this, you're right, this was more like internal infrastructure when it comes to. I feel under that one, but that might be a different,
Thank you.
maybe not a goal, but more.
This might be on the staff.
It might be more on staff, but
I think that it's a technology thing because it is our digital work product. so-
Right, sorry, I meant not to put it on the staff goal, but just
Oh.
on the staff and the objectives for the.
Yeah.
And for.
Right. Sure, yeah, but I think it underneath the larger goal of digital resources
Mhm.
and
I like
digital
that.
services from it.
That's good jargon. Let's get some acronyms in here. I get the sense that.
Sicko.
The administrative staff. It's like 8 words and like 5 done correctly. Okay. Yeah. Shall we move on? from-
SIKO, sicko.
Let's go. Streamline institution.
And that's it for us.
We're still kind of on time, so access outreach and collection subcommittee reports.
Sure. We met in the beginning of the month, so I was harkening back in my memory to what we talked about. We do have a less organized brainstorming doc that we're taking notes in, and we were truly brainstorming, I think, just everything related to these areas that we would take from the old plan or adding to a new plan. But reading back over them and reminding myself of what we talked about, it did sort of fall into some broader categories. And I think that we'll see echoes from the other subcommittees. Like I see a lot of facilities and the technology things echoed in the things we were talking about in this area too. So they will sort of align into these broader goals. But being adaptable and flexible, because we do acknowledge that we have seen change in needs and we will see change in needs in the community and in our access programming and collections, we want to respond to that. So we want to be flexible in terms of hours and schedules and locations of programming. So adaptability and flexibility, a lot of those tie into that. We talked a lot about awareness and discoverability. So how do we get our community to know about what we offer and take it so that they can take advantage of it, but also how do we become aware of what services we might be able to provide that we're not already, partnering with other organizations and the groups they serve. Again, because that's a two-way street for awareness of what we offer, they might not know, and also what do they need that we could offer. That ties into taking a look at our catalog, our data, and our presentation online to meet current information seeking behavior to make sure that people will find what they need. So that could be like nitty-gritty catalog metadata, librarianship, and how we do present our collections, but also how we present our services online. And physical spaces, which again ties into facilities, but we did talk about it in terms of access, talking about where is public transportation and how we tie into that, and the barriers to access, again, hours, schedules, physical things. So that ties back to facility. The other big broad goal I thought was I noticed was the growth in outreach. So literally the department is growing, we have more vehicles, we expect more geographic distribution of our outreach services. How are we going to grow into that? And the scope of our outreach too, we talked about, again, engaging in more community groups, meeting people where they are. And then the last sort of big umbrella I saw was balance and inclusion through diversity. This could be in services, in programming and in the collections. We talked about the importance of promoting literacy of all kinds, information, digital, financial, health, early literacy, lifelong learning, all of those things that we would want to highlight and make sure we have resources to promote. On the collection side, the diversity of formats, ensuring that we have the balance and the funding to provide that. Digital versus physical, that's an accessibility issue. And that we want to reflect the diverse needs of our community in our collections and services. So those were all of our little brainstorming bullets, and they sort of tied into those four things, I thought. And then our next steps would be, again, and this is coming from the survey and from the staff survey, identifying those community groups that we would want to get feedback from, and also either start or strengthen the partnerships we have with them. So identifying those groups, and then also identifying staff members we want to get specific feedback from the key stakeholders, like the selectors and the programming committees, that sort of thing. That's what we talked about.
I think we just stole this. Was this from Latasha?
Yeah, I think we couldn't remember which was which, so
We
we
just
just needed it.
Okay, I feel it just works.
Did I miss anything?
That's good. So I think here so I think that this subcommittee can be in June, try to come up with some draft language here for things, but then also we want to put a pin in that until we get our community feedback. This is going to be an area where we can.
A lot of it, I think, was we're gonna get ideas from the surveys that we.
Yeah, and not just the staff, but especially.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, do we have a partnership with Jaunt?
Not official. Good idea, though, right?
Yeah, because, that could help with some of those people with babies and trying to get here, and they can drop them off and they'll be right there.
Yeah, I mean, in Charlottesville, there is pretty good access via either a CTS, which is the city's transit, or university transit. So they're pretty, and right now they're pretty good buses. They get around even to our side. It's just not there. But it's not like all demand. Like I want to go story time at this time. So that
Right.
one of the things we should look at is trying to. Right.
Good luck with that, because they don't have enough drivers.
They don't know. So they'll stare.
Often, but I think.
John also is having, I think they're doing a great job out there.
The schools can.
I mean, that could be even broad, like Kayla's the spokesperson for the Aspen Express, right?
Yeah.
Which takes daily to get from Stanford to Charlottesville, so. It could include the entire region. John does, not that Aspen Express. It's an area.
Right, transit, Chanda District Planning Commission.
Okay, any other thoughts from anybody else in the greater committee?
Interesting while you were talking, it might be one of the groups we might want to identify as literacy volunteers. We just seem to bubble up a lot.
We did put in literacy stakeholders, I think it's
Yeah, you just said community groups that might involve in surveys related to these topics, and it's blank. And so
yeah, it was farther up. We also is under barriers too. I saw it earlier today. We were all over them.
Yeah, there we go, yeah.
Literacy stations.
yeah, literacy comes up a lot, but I just didn't see there.
Yeah.
Like as a particular group.
Yeah, I don't think they got.
Identify, exactly.
Yeah, and I going to rearrange all these lists to.
We have, the library has had a long-standing partnership with the Literacy Volunteers, but it's pretty loose. There's nothing, there's no on this or that or this. That. So it would be good maybe to talk about the needs that they have. And this is what we run into all the time with all of the agencies that are offering literacy support and recommendations. Is trying to figure out what materials we can. So you see that with the IRC.
I was thinking about barriers. I did literacy. BC and New York. And so some of the things that were just really interesting is until you talk to someone who has the barrier where they can't actually read.
Yeah.
So one of my students would take taxis everywhere because you get in a taxi and you say, I need to go here, and then you don't have to read any of the signage. So that, I just think it was really eye-opening for me, but I just wonder what they have in terms of understanding certain groups in our community, what's a barrier for them to go to the library? Do they think like, what do they think about, you know, what the services are? Do they find it intimidating? Is there anything that we can do that make it less intimidating for them to?
And I think that gets to the question that we always have when we go through these processes is how do we get that feedback? Because that person's not going to fill out a survey.
Well, literacy volunteers, we have, this was years ago, last time we did it, but talked to the volunteer tutors.
Yeah.
Because they're the direct lines with the students. And have it inviting the volunteers to come to the library, the tutors, whether they're employees at ACE or volunteer tutors, to come to the library and say, here's what we have, and that tutors bring students as an introduction, to sort of go down the chain.
They can also identify what we need that you don't have.
Exactly. Yeah.
Spaces.
There's really interpreters to needs.
Yeah, small conference rooms.
That's
Getting back to facility.
Yeah. And every tutor.
Okay, so this group will meet again next month. Or two.
Yeah, and so next month, we might have staff survey feedback.
Yeah, I guess we need to figure out how the time for that. So we'll put a pin in that.
We might be later in the month.
Might be later. Also, the summertime, it's harder to get library staff
Yeah.
meeting.
You're on vacation.
Okay, so the final subcommittee is staffing and finance subcommittee. And that is Hay.
Susan.
Susan, sorry. I think you raised your hand.
You just don't move now, quarter of that.
You clicked your ear.
Susan, anything specific to say about the meeting?
Yes, I guess our top priority is salaries. And we are going to look at the salary scale once it's presented. Also, we need for our assessments to tie into salaries now and have a broader look at the assessment tool itself. And look at job descriptions. Are they being accurate as to what people are doing? Staff retention, going to look at some training and safety comes up again. I'll look at our hiring practices, standardize their interview questions that we have, and make sure that DEI is part of that hiring practice. To help the board focus on maximizing funding, whether it's through the state or through other organizations, to add to the funding that we have for various things that are needed. Help with maybe a fundraising plan. And meet with the local jurisdiction to educate them on how JMRL is funded and how it operates within their jurisdiction. Particularly because we so often have new boards and they know that's JMRL, but they don't understand what that means. So many boards think they're giving 5% to their locality. Well, that means the librarians in that locality are getting 5%, not necessarily. To be responsive to community needs, particularly about library hours. To work on staff capacity and their competency. We thought maybe a newsletter for staff members, a training newsletter, a way to acknowledge staff, to continue to work with diversity, equity, inclusion, to remove the barriers that we have. Once again, those fees, fines and fees and out of area fee. And to look at a way that we can connect between the branches more. That other than just that one day that we have in October and our cross training, how else can we collaborate between branches? And we met in person and we're going to meet next June the 13th in Nelson.
This is the only information I've already said.
There's so much movement, just this tangent, there's so much movement. Branch.
Generally, you work at one branch locations because of how funding works at JMRL, so. Susan works at the Nelson Library, so the entirety of her salary is paid for.
Do you mean, right?
Yeah, no,
Do you mean as job opportunities become available?
No, I think David was addressing it, just like, you know, where you stuck at Central forever.
We do have people like,
Whatever.
they start as a substitute here and then they move on to a full-time position at one of the other branches as it becomes available.
But they're applying for and taking a job at another location and then they're there. We do not really have flexibility among staff to say like, oh, okay, well, this week you're in, next week you're in. So it's something I think that cross training is the first little wedge in the door. Trying to break that open a little bit. There's two majors who just will probably should make that happen across geographic areas, keep it nowhere, but no, the biggest barrier is the funding structure that we have. So you know, if you're accountable to the folks that pay, JMRL pays the salaries, but a portion of it is paid for by the main locality.
Although that connectivity that you were talking about and then, or that, you know, you and Kayla were talking about in the TAC, that TAC brought up, like sharing resources is a big part of that because the collaborative, like, again, not reinventing the wheel when you're like, oh, well, somebody else already made that sign about lockers. Actually, 4 of us did because we didn't know, and they're all in Canva and everybody's got their Canva account. So stuff like that, I think, is another to tie in.
So you're talking about the need for better, I mean, to Susan's point about better communication and shared resources.
Yeah, because when we collaborate,
To the digital support, right? Yes, and some of that comes from the leadership of the regionally funded positions, like the references programming heads, you know, can communicate that, but a lot of the actual work is done by branch staff, and it needs to go up.
but if there's no infrastructure about where to store all that stuff
Yeah,
either,
exactly.
and nobody knows where to find it. I know when I was at Central, it was one place, and then it got moved to another place.
I think that, speaking of reference staff here, that is a regional cost. It's largely paid for by Charlottesville and Albemarle. 90% of the salary for the regional reference is paid for as a central library cost, but 10% is shared amongst all the jurisdictions. And Catherine's done a good job of setting a liaison amongst our staff for each branch so that there's a reference librarian that's available to travel to Nelson County and to help them with programming and develop programs. But it's not somebody that they could regularly rely on to like, oh, hey, it's Saturday afternoon, I need somebody to cover the desk so I can eat lunch.
And then you call director.
Then you call. Only for Nelson County.
Yeah.
Sierra gets called on.
They just take this.
Okay, so our timeline is the last thing that was on the agenda here.
I think adjournment.
Yeah.
But actually,
Um,
so everyone's planning to meet. Their committees are planning to meet. soon.
I guess my only concern is the one that Mary just brought up is
Should we wait for our
ways
major?
to get data in. I think that we could do that
By June 13th, when they're meeting in Nelson.
yeah. But I think it's ready to go out, and it's just a question of whether or not it bumps up against.
If you want to send it out now, we're not sending ours out till next week. So
Ooh,
Okay,
you just gotta open.
all right, the window is open.
Windows open. I'm meeting with the web committee
then they
tomorrow
only have
afternoon.
7 days.
7 days.
It's right.
Do it now.
A whole
So,
cross-training the digital.
polling staff, starting this week and ask for the responses, by the end of next week, the 26th, then we would have all of June. Yes. And we'll see what kind of responses we get. That is a tight turnaround, so it's not overwhelming then.
We might be able to overlap. them.
Yeah, because we're kind of like, we didn't really have an end date for the for the staff feedback. We were just wanting to like build that out first. Get something out for the patrons to do a similar scavenger hunt.
And the first person from the staff gets a water bottle.
You know. Okay, we should talk about that too, because I also don't want too much surveying public, so if you have a hard deadline for the scavenger hunt. at the end of June, right?
We want the website to launch
Because the website, we're trying to launch.
July 1.
Scavenger hunt just doesn't sound like survey.
It doesn't to me either.
Okay.
Yeah.
that's good. That
It's
makes me
like,
feel
help
better.
us out with our.
That makes me feel better.
One question about, since we're talking about feedback, so we're having the staff survey and we're not talking about a public survey, but we're also talking about these community groups that we're gonna reach out to
Yeah.
get targeted feedback. So do we need some sort of like script or direction that when I approach, for instance, if I were to approach literacy volunteers and say, what do we want to know from them? Having some sort of structured way of guiding that conversation would be useful so that we're getting sort of good information at right meetings.
Well,
But I imagine that's like,
I have put in, that I would like us to think about the community surveys in the form of targeting our patrons, but also making an effort to target those non-users. And I think that would be a good area to really focus on as far as that, like our community groups. And one reason I would like to hear who they think we should reach out to is because in these cases, they're gonna know their community groups, be able to talk to them and say, oh, do you library? No, why not? Why, what do you need? That kind of thing. So I think that's something for us to keep in mind then when we're talking about those, is the clear cut between who's already familiar with us and then how do we utilize our community partners to try and reach out to non-users as much as possible. And so
Look, David already wrote a script for you.
20 years ago.
20 years old. I guess.
You can tweak it.
This is something that we can talk about, we can talk about this. I was thinking about was not necessarily, I was thinking about trying to get a list of folks that we would reach out to and give the survey to. The survey would be broad enough that it would be, and we could give a prologue saying, hey, I know you're working in this area, the library's also working in this area, we want to know how we can best support your needs. Feel free to send me any thoughts that you have, but also here's the survey.
Could you share it amongst your volunteers?
Yeah, for the organization. But also we could do, this is more direct, what you're talking about, and 20 years ago, and this was the year that the library hired the Ivy Group, two of them. And they had sit downs and recorded. I also have the video of these if anyone's interested. And I sat down with community, leaders. This was will you sit down with me to talk? And then
it'll only take 45 minutes.
Training. It's a scavenger.
I had a question about so if we're giving this to community partners, is it the generic public one that we're giving them, is what you're saying?
that was what I was
Okay.
So
So I also
develop
think,
it with the idea that we would use it both an individual and.
maybe that's not possible, but if it's possible, then
I just wonder if it would maybe not generate the same kind of feedback that we would need. I don't know. I haven't done this before, but I was wondering, because like if I was the head of the literacy volunteers and I was really thinking about the people that I was surveying, the questions might be different than the same we would give to an individual. Just because.
It's just how you answer it. Like if somebody hands me a survey about the library, I'm going to answer it how I use the library. But if somebody asks me about how I as a librarian think people use the library, I will answer it very differently. My students use the library.
Yeah.
But then also I, as an instructor, I'm using the library in a third way. And you need aid to answer it.
Well, and I think you have to include some type of questions that are like, why don't you use the library? What resources, what would encourage you to use the library? Something like that. So you don't want the questions to be so like an assumption of, oh, you use this, we're only going to get, or you're just going to get no, no, no. So some of our goals or our objectives are about identifying resources that our community needs You know, I've talked to my own family, he's like, well, then you should do this, and you should do this. I'm like, modern libraries do these things. And it goes out again to accessibility of the information, like these different community groups may not be, or groups within the community may not be aware of just what libraries do. So I would like to see if we could come up with a way of, even if it's not a separate survey for the non-users, at least being sure that we can direct some questions in there that can help give us the data we need to actually support to make those goals happen.
This might be a stupid question too, but how anonymous is a public survey? It's like, we don't want it to be anonymous. It's coming from a community group that we want specific targeted feedback about. True. Right? So
I think it comes down to, again, the questions that you utilize. I mean, if it's not anonymous, yes, you might, someone's still not going to give you all the demographic information you may need to understand why they're saying what they are saying. I mean, of course, we don't want to do an assumption, but I do think we still want enough of a broad collection of data to be able to utilize it. So I do think it's a challenge. It's one reason why when we were talking about doing the surveys, I kind of put the non-users above patrons, because I do think that was something, not because they were more important, but something that I was like, we're really going to have to think about how we want to do this, what we want to ask them, what we need to figure out. So
Also starting a survey with how often do you use the library? And it could be never, and not the assumption like, oh, we're just giving it to someone who just walked in the door. We're not assuming that anymore. So then it's sort of like, why not? Explain.
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking of like also the groups that we would partner with, or are also users as a group. And so if we're asking people to answer a survey, either as a user or a non-user, but as an individual, that is different things that we would want to know from how could your group use the library? I feel like those are different needs that we want to make sure we include. But it's very possible that we could create a survey that serves all these needs.
we could, and also even thinking about how, like, to what level are we talking about breaking the survey down from individual to organization to overarching, or are we trying to get more of an individual input? And is gathering data from specific community partners in that sense another type of survey or input that we want?
Maybe that would be an objective that we have to do, like if one of the goals is to be partnering with community organizations, then one of our tasks to go to that goal, not part of the strategic plan process, but next year, we would be identifying the groups to have more in-depth needs.
Because I think when I was thinking about identifying groups, it was more of how can we utilize them to help us reach people that we may not be able to just reach within our branches on a regular basis, but it double fold in that it gives us an idea of who we can reach out to more directly on some other issues. Or
So we'll talk about this at the subcommittee meeting, and it's possible that this would be kind of two things. We have just kind of more informed, targeted community discussion similar to those questions that I just showed there. Or it's possible to create one survey to find them all. But I think
You could have a question about, are you involved with an organization?
yeah, how could the library
And how
Yeah.
a community organization do you feel like the library supports you and then try to get
I think there are
feedback,
the board has had questions about partnership and partnership programs. In the sense that, like, who does the library choose to partner with? And what organization would we then reach out to becomes a self-selecting set of, like, here's who we want to use the library. So I think we have to think very carefully about that whole process if we're going to get into it.
We probably don't have time to do it,
That's my second concern.
but what if you?
I thought that was the end.
That's never true.
What if you didn't do a survey with community partners, but you invited them to have a discussion? I think you would get so many ideas because then they would feed off of each other.
I
Oh,
like that.
group, like a focus
group
group of community
discussion.
partners.
You talk about real life jam.
Exactly.
Yeah, but how do you incentivize people to come, you know, again, it's finding the time, the place, and getting them to come. I was thinking that too, you have like a work session, or you have like a forum, you know, we're doing the library's five-year plan.
Or
Right,
food,
so
or-
identify certain themes, we identify adult literacy, or we identify a certain population, and invite focused groups that serve those needs or populations, and then invite just a few in a room.
And if you feed them, they will come.
Another idea is if we asked to come to a meeting of people that were already meeting, that were already groups of community partners, like there's an aging one that you know, there's all these different groups that meet together that Erica used to go to, and then I used to go to through Central.
Right,
And
and there's
like-
a bunch of chamber subcommittees.
Exactly, and then like, you know, if there's other, I mean, I think, like Goodwill. Tom Gillette, that used to meet, like he would send out, and they have a whole agency of people who are talking about jobs, job related stuff. And I get their emails all the time, so.
And service
Like,
providers.
yeah.
Bring more of that outreach activity that we build into our plan for the next 5 years is to increase efforts like this.
But that was even something I was thinking, if there is a way to, I want to use the word plant, but plant these surveys into some of these big community group meetings as a way to be able to target people we might not normally be able to target.
Yeah, and then the
So-
feedback, we would also be able to identify the groups that we want to like reach out to further later on.
Yeah, like United Way.
Where are we locating their
They have all sub organizations that are. get together. So I think that sounds great. I think that the subcommittee will talk about a public survey and then brainstorm about what the best path forward is. I love Susan's idea of either linking people in and feeding them, or at least subset of that. We have to get them. And I also think that maybe Meredith's on the right track, that this might not be something in the timeframe that we're working on we can get done, but we can do some of it, you know, we can start a process and we can have goals about, let's do this better.
I know when we finished, we were going through accreditation at my museum. One of the things reaccreditation they made us actually go back and do was that we had been given several $1 million, and the staff had decided this is what we're going to do with it and everything. And they came back and said, you're making a lot of decisions, but do you know if your community actually wants or needs these things? So what we had to do was create kind of like these community town hall meetings to be able to share these ideas and stuff like that. So talking about having these groups come together, I mean, that could be another way of saying, these are some of the goals that we're thinking about. Does this serve your group? Does it serve, you know, your users in some way? But yeah, I think there's a lot we have to pull together.
Tell me more about the millions of dollars.
Oh, there's news articles.
So maybe once we have a draft there, that's the stage at which we enter into conversations with the groups to say, this is what we're thinking about, what have we missed?
Yeah, that's
And it's also an opportunity, which I think is something that's another goal, which is to inform more people about what resources there are. So I think, you know, sometimes having somebody go to the group meetings, which is like, by the way, you know, they can, there's all these digital resources available or whatever, stuff that you may not have had, helps if you haven't set foot in the library.
I have a feeling that last time, 5 years ago, we reached out. We had kind of separate tracks. I'll have to look back through what we have here. Because I remember reaching out specifically to our jurisdictional partners for feedback that was different from the feedback that we're with the general public. So going to our funding sources and asking what their needs were, not as like, hey, how often do you use the library, but like, what is
Yeah.
your county trying to achieve that we're
What is your strategic plan?
yeah.
Yeah. Bring it to our-
Yeah.
that makes a lot of it.
Right, so you can do that with budget.
That helps justify some of your budget requests.
Well, it also helps, like they are putting resources into the same conversation, how to invest improve our communities, meet the needs of our citizens. Okay, so that's the group that has the most work to do always, basically. And there might be a point where this is too big for our subcommittee, so let's try to perform a meeting this way and then. I'll get together.
Really can we evaluate and see if we feel like each of these subcommittees has kind of gone far enough? or-
Yeah, and if we could reallocate some of our human resources. Okay, so we've got 1 year and 30-something days.
Nominees.
No pressure.
No pressure. But I think we're making good progress, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting ideas that I've shared. Thank you so much for being so quick on the survey. Yeah.
Halo.
Setting us off on the right.
Kind of forgot I did it.
Next step. And I was like,
She's not doing it. I was like, it's nowhere.
All right, ready to adjourn?
Sure.
All right, we'll be in touch about July.
Thank you all. I'm close recording now.
All right.